Welcome to the fourth video in the series, Laws of Codex Oeralinda. In the past videos of this series, we looked at the constitutional law of Fryasland called the Tes, and the laws governing the Burgs, as well as meeting Minnow, the Sea King, credited with bringing law, as well as the notion of personal freedom to the island of Crete in the 2nd millennium BCE. In all, the Oeralinda manuscript contains 12 sections dedicated largely or exclusively to laws, and this series is designed to look at each in turn and give readers a primary background in the subject to foster understanding of what can otherwise be a confusing array of myths, concepts, and histories throughout the manuscript. The initial section of Codex Oeralinda is the Book of Adela followers, which contains all of the laws copied from the Burg walls on the advice of Adela, a famed and respected matron of this ancient people, about whom you can learn more in other videos on this channel. The laws I will present today are the general laws governing societal institutions such as marriage, as well as other aspects of community life and general commerce. They can be found in section 3b, and a link to the Oeralinda wiki page containing the English translations of the general laws, both the current translation by Jan Ott and the older version by William R. Sandbach, is available in the video description below. The Oeralinda wiki also contains copies of the original manuscript in the Fryas language and several Dutch translations, as well as dictionaries and further resources to aid in the study of Codex Oeralinda, all of which can be found at wiki.oeralinda.org. That's wiki.oeralinda.org. The general laws begin with a principal proclamation. 1. All Frya children are born in like wise. Therefore, they must also have the same rights, whether on land or on water, or any place Veralda provides. This first of the 12 statutes comprising the general laws establishes the principle of equal rights for all members of the tribes of Fryasland. And indeed, most of the general laws define rights rather than prohibitions. They can be viewed as a general code of societal conduct. The initial group of laws governs marriage and the obligations of the community towards newlyweds. 2. Every man may ask the wife of his choice, and every daughter may respond by offering her cup of welcome to the one she loves. 3. When a man has taken a wife, they are given a house and yard. If there is none, it must be built. 4. If he has gone to another village for a wife, and he wishes to remain there, they must provide a house and yard, as well as free use of the commons. We see here several elements of the foundational institutions of marriage and family, namely, that the concept of land ownership was a basic right rather than an individual privilege. House and home were viewed as the basis for any couple starting a family. It is also clear that men were the initiators of courtship, and that men, at least, were not bound to a certain village in order to enjoy these rights, connoting a freedom of movement on par with modern Western societies, despite the collective ordering of the Frya society. We also see that marriages were not arranged, and that each woman had an inherent right to refuse or accept a suitor by offering a libation in a cup of welcome. Such cups are still used to this day in marriage traditions in Scotland, where the two-handled welcome cup, or kesh, is kept by the married couple to offer a ceremonial drink to guests visiting the home. For the sake of ease in describing this first group of laws, I have used the phrase land ownership, but this is not quite accurate. As we will see in the following laws, land was not individually owned, but communally managed, being provided to individuals as the foundation of their community membership, though title to the land was never transferred to an individual owner. 5. All shall be provided with a share of land behind their house as a yard. None may have a share before their house, much less a surrounding share. Only someone who has done a worthwhile deed serving the common good may be given such, and his youngest son may inherit it, but after that the village must take it back. 6. Every village shall possess common land as required, and the alderman shall see to it that all fertilize and nurture their allotted share, so that those who come after might suffer no scarcity. Land was thus parceled out on a temporary basis. The homestead could be used for a lifetime, and in special cases passed down to the youngest son, after which the community retook possession and the land and perhaps buildings returned to the commons. As will be seen later in the manuscript, the laws on land ownership evolved and became corrupted over time, but this pastoral form of sharing economy existed at least as an ideal, and similar traditions can still be seen today, for instance, among the Amish in the eastern and midwestern United States. The idea of the commons also survived, for instance, in England, prior to the enclosure movement beginning in the late 16th century and peaking in the mid-18th century, when common land was privatized and rural populations were driven into the cities to fuel the Industrial Revolution. Large tracts of land were held in common by the people of a village or community. These lands were typically used for grazing animals, collecting firewood, gathering wild plants, and sometimes for cultivation. The commons were not owned by one individual, but were instead collectively managed and used by the members of the community. Final vestiges of common land use are currently being challenged in the United States as hunting, fishing, and grazing on public lands are saddled with increasing regulatory demands. The next set of laws continues with the theme of common land use, as well as introducing rules for commerce. 7. Every village may have a market for buying and selling or trading. All the remaining areas shall be reserved as uncultivated land and woodland, the trees of which none shall fell without common consent and the knowledge of the forest alderman, as the woods are for common use. Therefore, no one may own them. 8. The village may not take market charges exceeding 1/12 of the revenue, neither from locals nor from strangers, and the market portion may not be sold before the other goods. 9. All the market receipts must be annually divided into 100 parts 3 days before the Yule Day. 10. The reeve and his aldermen shall receive 20 parts thereof, the market judge and his helpers 5 parts, 10 parts for the market itself, the folk's mother 1 part, and the regional mother 4 parts, the village 10 parts, and the poor, that is, those who cannot work, 50 parts. As in the previous laws, a prohibition of private ownership is promulgated, here in relation to trees and forest land, while the right of all villages to engage in free commerce is codified. A right on behalf of the community to collect fees for trading is limited to 1/12 of the receipts, a fair price considering the lack of taxation power already established by the Birch laws examined in an earlier video. The final proscription in law number 8, that the market portion may not be sold before the other goods, remains somewhat enigmatic. The market portion seems to refer to the 1/12 of goods sold on which the market fee is based, but what is the meaning of may not be sold before the other goods? This remains difficult to discern, at least for me. In the original Fryas source text, this law reads, As merkgeld neem det dorp naut morni nema, så det 12e deel van de skatt, hoor van de inhemer, neer van de verhemende. Ook neem de merkskatt naut sellet neverta, as het ore god. This sentence clearly states that the fees may not exceed 1/12 of the skatt, which literally means treasure or treasury, translated by us as revenue. The second sentence is clear as well, that the same fee limit applies to both inhemer and verhemende, meaning local residents and those residing far off. It's the final clause that presents difficulty. A literal word-for-word translation would be, also not, may the market revenue not, earlier sold not be than the other goods. Note the complex negation that is typical of Fryas and can still be found in the Afrikaans language of the South African Boers. If any of you can offer insight or opinion as to how exactly this segment can be understood beyond the linguistics, which are fairly clear, please leave a comment below. The final two laws stipulate practices that are forbidden for participants in the markets and the accompanying sanctions. 11. Those who come to the market are strictly forbidden to practice usury. If any should do so, the maidens are obliged to make them known throughout the whole land, so that they will never be chosen for any office. For such people have covetous hearts. To accumulate wealth, they would betray all, the folk, the mother, their relatives, and ultimately themselves. 12. If any man is so corrupt that he sells diseased cattle or damaged goods as sound, the market judge shall expel him, and the maidens shall denounce him throughout the land. The term usury in this context likely refers to, or at least includes, price gouging, rather than lending it interest. The original term was volkerja, which literally means engaging in excessive growth. These last two laws also give us the first real insight into the duties of the maidens of the burg, namely, that they are responsible for spreading news in an official capacity. Their further roles will become clearer later on in the manuscript. In the next video of this series, we will examine all three books of laws governing defense, war, and security, in which many functions of leaders, including the volksmother, aldermen, kings, and reeves, are further specified, and fascinating rules of procedure are set forth.